The clone tool, or the clone stamp tools as it is referred to in Photoshop, is one of my favorites for doing some touch-ups. Little things like removing telephone wires to major things like we're going to do in this image. It's relatively easy to use. How you use it is going to be dependent upon what you want to accomplish or what you want to erase. But let's just go ahead and look at this image, and I'll diddle around with it a little bit, and you can use one of your own, or you can tackle this one and dig into it as deeply as you would like. This is an image of a courtyard of a castle in Scotland. My wife and I were there about 5 years ago, and I thought it was an impressive building, so I snapped this picture. But you can see that down here in this corner I have what looks like a garment or a sleeve. I'm not sure how that got in the image. In the center we've got a sign here in the courtyard. I probably wouldn't want that on my living room wall, as well as this sign over here, not to mention this gentleman that's sitting on a bench. Over on this part we've got again a sign here. This part of the museum and this lady. And up above we have some signs of modern life, some antennas. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the antennas to introduce you to the clone stamp tool, or the clone tool, which is right over here. And when we click on it, we can choose several brush types. This is essentially a brush, but what you're doing instead of painting new pixels is that you are cloning existing pixels. The actual clone tool that we're going to use to get rid of this antenna is over in your toolbox. You can press the C key, or you can click on the icon. The dialog box is pretty much that of any paint tool. Not a whole lot of difference. And that's because basically what we're doing is we're painting pixels, or we're cloning them. I'm going to go to a fuzzier brush, even though this part of the image looks pretty consistent. But I'm going to try that first. So down the lower part of your screen, it asks you to hold down the control key to select a source. So I'll hold down the control key and I'll click next to the antenna mast. And then notice how I've now got two circles that I can now take, and if I hold down the left key, it's basically going through and deleting those pixels. Now I'm going to zoom in here to get this next antenna. I'll click next to it, again holding down the control key to pick my source. I'll paint away that one, and then I'll come over, hold down the control key, get rid of that one. Now watch what happens when I move over this small statue here. See, it starts to copy it, and that's not what we want, so we'll do an undo, and again we'll get that part of it. And now I'm going to click up above it, and just each time I click, it like stamps it away. And one more antenna here. Again, I'll just click above it, holding down the control key. And paint these pixels in. Basically, I'm just painting the sky above it. There's a little bit of work in here to do, but I'm not sure anybody's going to see that, and that would just take some extra time. So the antennas are gone. Before I work on the main portion of the image, I want to go ahead and just scale the whole thing here. There we go. Sort of like you did on the painting. And I'm going to lose some of the pixels to the left or the right, but the wide angle lens that I used to take this picture really distorts it. That helps quite a bit to be able to do that. In any event, let's focus on this portion right down here. this garment. And I think I'm going to go ahead and once again use this clone stamp tool. I'm going to make my brush quite a bit larger because I've got a lot of work to do here, a lot of pixels to replace. I'll hold down the control key here and I'll just go ahead and paint down. And I'm letting go of the mouse key every now and then. Again, we'll select above here by holding down the control key. And we'll start to paint some of the bricks above there. Again, I'll reselect. And I have to let go of the left mouse button as I go along, because if I just hold on to it and drag down, whoops, do an undo there. If I try to do too much at once, what happens is as I come down, I erase the garment and replace it with the stones. But as I get closer down, it starts to paint the garment again. So that's why I'm just left clicking with the mouse button to help this go away. I'm going to come over here to the right now. Again, try to do the same thing, get some of these larger foreground stones in. And let's see, I'm going to, again, just kind of come in and just sort of phase those out like so. And when we come back out and look at the same image, that looks pretty good. Again, you can just kind of come in and do what you will, but it definitely looks better at this particular point in this short amount of time than it did when the garment was there. Now, what about this sign? Well, same sort of technique. When we examine the background here, you can see that it's just mostly stones. Across the top of the sign, we have this wall, and then there's sort of the shaded area right in there. So let's just go ahead and reduce the size of the brush some. We don't want to get too aggressive. I've got this light area right here, so I'm just going to click on that. Come through and paint. Do an undo there. Reselect here by holding down the control key and clicking with the left mouse. And because I'm using a kind of a fuzzy tool, it's not leaving a real hard, sharp edge to the cloning that I'm doing here. See, I'm going to grab right over there. I'm going to see if I can get the wall and that kind of shaded part of the courtyard that meets the wall at the same time here. That would be nice, but I'm probably going to have to come in and do some fine tuning. Well, I'll tell you, when we come out and look at it like this, that looks pretty great. So let's work on the next sign. We'll come in here, and as we examine it, we have some stonework in this area, and then we have the door frame, and then we have the opening for the door, which happens to be open. We need a smaller brush, so we'll hold down the left bracket, and I think I want a little harder brush for this one, and so I'm going to just select over here on the left, and then kind of carefully paint that part away. There we go. Now I'm going to select the step. And select down here and get the next step. And then the courtyard. And we'll grab the stones over here. Nope, that was too far away. Let's zoom in a couple more levels and grab there. It's kind of hard in this area because you have all these dark shadows. And each time I'm swiping down and reselecting, I'm just kind of copying along here. Now you have these stones up here, so let's copy those along here so it looks just and I'll select those, kind of pull across, and then let's come out and look, and got this little part right in here to take care of, so I'll click there and there we go. And oops, got a little piece of the sign there that we didn't get. So let's see, we'll just click in that area above it. And the sign's gone. So we'll work on this gentleman next. And again, it's just pretty much the same process. I don't think I could take and make the gentleman disappear from the bench seat there. So I think I'm going to have to do away with all of them. But I like a challenge. And so I'm going to go ahead and see if I can leave the bench and get rid of the gentleman. So let's go ahead and get to work here. Okay, so that's too much. Need to make the brush smaller. None of this is super technically difficult. It's just a little time consuming. Now the easiest way to erase this guy now is to, instead of trying to erase him, is to try to clone the right half of the bench where he is. So let's go ahead and select our source here and let's just move across. It's a little bit bright, might have to burn that down just a little bit, and it's also just a little bit crooked. So I'm going to undo that work and try to be just a little more careful. Actually, I'm going to select over here on the far right. Try to pull across straight. Looks like there's a little bit of a shadow above them there. And let's see, I'm going to click on that part right there. Okay, so far so good. Now let's see, we need a much bigger brush right now, and so I'm going to select here. Select down here. Oops. A good way to do this too at this particular point, once I get this top row done, is to select up above here and then pull down, and that way the vertical part of the back matches. Now this part in here is sort of shaded, so that's going to take some time to come in and reconstruct that, and I won't do that right now, but instead I'll just try to put in that part. And then the background here is sort of vague, but let's go with a little bit smaller brush. We'll select this part. Again, we'll reselect and we'll just work across from the right to the left, and then sort of shaded underneath there. Let's just get rid of the last part of the shade. And so yeah, this part right in here would take a little bit extra time, but I won't do that in the video. But I'm pretty pleased with that at this point. I mean, that looks pretty much like the bench would look. I think this part's not quite parallel, so we can come in and fix that by selecting, didn't hold down the control key. Now that the guy is gone, actually I'm going to choose this as my point. And then we'll grab this up here. Grab again. Grab again. Grab again. And then as we come out, and that looks a lot better. So we've got the bench if we want the bench. That looks, like I said, that was just a little bit more of a challenge. And that picture is already looking a whole bunch better. Let's go ahead and open up the original. So you see there we had, the garment here in the front, the signs, the gentleman, and it was sort of distorted by the lens. And here's what we've done so far. Antennas are gone, all the rest of it. So that's the clone stamp tool. It's really just a great tool for getting rid of all these little things that end up being in a photograph. So anyways, you work on this image or work on one of your own, and I think you're going to find the clone tool almost addictive in terms of making images more visually appealing.